Hey everyone, Aaron here from Rudy Visuals. Great to see you all and hope everyone is doing well. In today's video, we're talking all about the Sony A7 IV and why you might consider getting one in 2025. Now, this is a camera that has been out for a while now. I think it came out in 2021, so there are already plenty of really detailed technical reviews out there. So instead today, I'm just gonna simply talk about 5 reasons why this is a great camera and 5 things that I wish could be improved. And at the end of it all, whether it's ultimately still worth it or not. As always, this will be based on our real world usage of this camera for both professional and recreational activity. So I think that will segue very nicely into its first pro, and that is its versatility. So the A7 IV is a camera that can, for the most part, do pretty much anything that you throw at it. The A7 range has always been a safe hybrid option for people who don't want to spend crazy amounts of money on a camera and people who shoot both videos and stills. It's not really a master of either, so it does feel like a sort of jack of all trades, master of none type of camera. But because of that, this is a very versatile camera. If you shoot stills, if you shoot weddings, portraiture, wildlife, landscapes, or you just want to take really high quality snaps of your vacation, this is going to get the job done. Likewise, if you shoot video, if you create content for YouTube, for example, this shoots 4K, it does 10-bit 42, it's got S-Log 3. The A7 IV is certainly not a slouch when it comes to spec, and it sits relatively well specs-wise with its competitors. That's why I would recommend this over an S3, an FX30, FX3 if you're someone starting out or someone who does a lot of hybrid work. However, because of all that, this leads me to my next con, which is the fact that it is, a jack of all trades, master of none. So if you are the sort of person who doesn't do hybrid work and you're only interested in video or you're only interested in stills, then there are obviously better choices out there like those cameras I mentioned before. The A7 IV doesn't really specialize in one specific area the way that the FX3 or the FX6 does for video, or how the A7R, A9 series are more like stills focused. It doesn't have, for example, an XLR inputs, it's got no SDI, it hasn't got timecode, it doesn't have like a cine body that you can rig up in the same way that you can with an FX3, and the same goes for stills. It is kind of unfair to compare the A7 IV to those more professionally centric cameras, which cost a lot more as well. But stick around to some of the other cons to see where exactly the A7 IV is making those compromises. So the next pro on my list is the full frame back illuminated CMOS sensor, which has 33 megapixels. This is a really nice upgrade over the A7 III, which had 24 megapixels. That increased megapixel size means that you're able to really capture a lot more detail and sharpness in your images. So this is great. If you need to crop in a lot, we shoot a lot of wildlife and bird, both stills and video, so we do tend to crop in quite a lot to try and fill the frame and get closer to the animals. And I'm always so impressed with how much I'm able to do so and how much image data the sensor is still able to capture. Likewise, if you shoot portraiture as well, you can see how the extra resolution is really good for capturing those fine details and smooth gradations. It also offers a wide ISO and dynamic range and works great in low light conditions when paired with fast lenses. So overall, you're not going to be unhappy with the image quality. Okay, so next con is the FPS in burst mode. So this is probably for me one of its biggest at least for me. I shoot a lot of wildlife and bird photography now, so a lot of times you do need to shoot in burst mode and hope one of those shots is in focus. So the A7 IV can shoot up to 10 frames, which is decent, but that's only if you shoot in compressed RAW or in JPEG. So for that full fat lossless uncompressed RAW, it goes all the way down to 6 frames per second. Now, in most instances, that's perfectly fine, but when you look at something like the A9 Mark III and it's ridiculously insane 120 frames per second, you realize very quickly why that camera costs so much more. And if you shoot professionally, like wildlife, sports, fast action, race cars, that sort of thing, the A7 IV, sadly, it doesn't quite cut it. For me as a recreational wildlife shooter, it's fine, but I know that I could have such an easier time with like an A9. Anyway, back to a pro, and that is the way this camera feels and handles and the build quality. I feel like it's such a big improvement over the A7 III. It's a lot chunkier, there's more dials. I really like this much bigger and deeper grip that makes the A7 IV a lot more comfortable to actually use. The dials are also fully customizable, of course, to control things like your aperture, your ISO, and I much prefer the textured joystick compared to the one on the A7 III. The screen is also improved, featuring a fully articulating screen, The screen quality is okay, but the viewfinder is excellent. I also love that there is a dial to quickly change from stills to movie mode and S&Q, and you can set custom modes for each one for ease and convenience. The body is made from a rugged magnesium alloy, and Sony claims it is designed with weather sealing to protect against dust and moisture. Now, the bottom part of the A7 III was infamous for having issues with like weather sealing, so it's good to know that this has been fixed with the A7 IV. As always, I take this with a little bit of grain of salt. People always have wildly varying experiences when it comes to stuff like this. That being said, we have taken this to Iceland. We shot some whales on a boat in the freezing cold, and we were constantly being peppered with seawater, with rain, and it was super windy as well, and the rain came down at one point. But the A7 IV handled that absolutely fine. I probably wouldn't do it again, to be fair, without a cover, but it was good to know that it was able to handle those more kind of extreme conditions. So the next con is the 4K 60 crop. So if you're someone who shoots video and in 4K and you want that 60 frames per second for nice slow-mo, you can do that with the A7 IV, but it's a big but, only with a crop. Now, I don't mind a teeny bit of a crop, but this will crop your video 1.5 times, so that's pretty much like going from full frame to APS-C basically. Now, this may not be a big deal for some, but as someone who does shoot fairly often in small spaces, in cramped offices and in labs in my day job, this is pretty annoying as my 24mm is more like a 35, etc. But to counter that last point, my next pro is that despite the 4K 60 crop, the A7 IV is still a very capable video shooter and can shoot 10-bit 422 internal. Again, this is a very nice upgrade over the A7 III, which was limited to only 8-bit 420. So what this means is that the A7 IV is able to capture significantly more larger colors compared to, you know, A7 III. So something like 17 million colors versus over a billion. Now, to the naked eye, you probably won't be able to tell those colors apart without really pixel peeking. What this means is that if you shoot an S-Log, for example, you'll have so much more flexibility in how you grade your footage in post, resulting in more stylistic choice without your colors clipping and looking all mushy and weird. Okay, so my next con is probably one of the biggest flaws of this camera, and that is the infamous overheating. Now, unlike some of its bigger brothers and sisters, the A7 IV has no fans to speak of, and all the cooling on the body is passive. Now, both of us have actually experienced this camera shutting off when shooting 4K 60 after about 20-25 minutes roughly, and often when we're like filming like talking head interviews, for example, where people are talking for like an hour. Now, a quick fix to this is to just set the auto power off from normal to high, and after I've changed this one setting, I haven't encountered any problems since then. But it's always like on the back of my mind that I've basically allowed the camera to get hotter than what it considers a normal temperature, and I do worry about what effect that has on the long-term effect of the camera's health. It's just something that, you know, you have to consider in terms of like how it might degrade the camera over time. So my final pro is probably one of the things I love the most about this camera, and that is the autofocus. Now, first of all, this camera has so many different focusing modes for specific scenarios. It is kind of overwhelming at first, but it also comes with that amazing AF system with, you know, face detect, eye tracking for humans, animals, and birds, something that I've really come to rely on. The touch to focus is also fantastic. The focus tracking has come on leaps and bounds since the A7 II and III. You know, you can customize the focusing speed and sensitivity to really fine tune to fit different situations. It just makes the camera so easy to use. I always feel like I'm able to just focus on the composition and the subject, focus on the bird I'm tracking, and I know I can rely on that autofocus to get that sharp shot. Which takes me nicely to my final con, and that is the rolling shutter, which is unfortunately still there. You know, that really jelly, warpy look you get with fast panning. It is very noticeable on the A7 IV when you're shooting fast moving subjects and doing those fast pans, and it is definitely more noticeable for me when shooting in 4K. This is sadly just due to the limitations of the sensor on this camera. I have found it looks a little bit better when used in crop sensor mode, so that's one workaround, so I don't find it as big of an issue when shooting wildlife, for example, or trying to shoot birds in flight, as I'm usually in crop mode anyway, but it is something to be aware of. So those are my 5 pros and 5 cons of the A7 IV. This is ultimately still a really amazing camera even now in 2025, and I think despite those cons, the pros still outweigh a lot of them. And considering how cheap you can get this camera now, particularly if you go down the used route, for me, when people are looking to invest in a proper full frame mirrorless camera, this is a camera that I would recommend for most people. I think you're getting real value, and it's such a bang for the buck type of camera. I think the only real issue with this camera now is the competition out there in this price bracket is pretty fierce compared to 2021 when this was first released. You've got the Canon R6 Mark II, the Z6 III, there's the Lumix S5 series, so it's not quite as clear cut of a choice if you're looking for that kind of jack of all trades type of camera at a fairly, attainable price point. However, for me as someone who previously owned an A7 III, I've got an S3, FX3, FX6, I have a bunch of E-mount glasses as well. I'm fully invested in Sony at this point, so the A7 IV was a very logical, easy choice for me, one that I can use for work and for play. And if you are someone who is on the A7 II or 3 or the R3, the A7 IV offers a really nice upgrade path in key areas, and for me it's still an incredible workhorse camera in 2025. Okay, anyway, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about the A7 IV or anything in general, leave them down there in the comment section below. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button, subscribe if you loved it. You can also hit the notifications and bell so you don't miss out on any of our future videos. Follow us on socials as well. We're actually really on Instagram, so you can follow us on Instagram. And I guess I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.